Late 16th century, Florence was ruled by the Medici family, now with Francesco de Medici as the Grand Duke of Tuscany. Francesco kept Tuscany in fair order, but he was far from being popular, and part of the reason was his open affair with the lady from Venice, Bianca Capello. Francesco's wife was Joanna, or Giovanna, of Austria, the Holy Roman Emperor's youngest daughter. Francesco had no love for her, but still performed his duty to produce a Medici heir. And initially, this seemed to be working. Giovanna soon got pregnant and gave birth. But for 10 years, she bore him only girls: Eleonora, Romola, Anna, Isabella, Lucrezia, and Maria. But no son, and that means no heir. And this left an opening for Bianca Capello, Francesco's adored mistress. She dreamed of replacing Giovanna as Grand Duchess. If she bore a son, her child could become heir. But there was a problem. Giovanna kept getting pregnant, though always with daughters. Bianca, nothing. It was not like she was infertile. She had given birth to a child with her first husband, Pietro Bonaventura, but she just simply wasn't getting pregnant with Francesco. It was a puzzle. She was getting more and more anxious. And then, in the winter of 1575, after years of frustration, Bianca at last became pregnant. Francesco was overjoyed. Bianca grew round, no longer the slim Venetian beauty, but radiant in triumph. And in August of 1576, she gave birth to a boy. At long last, the longed-for son. They named him Antonio. This was Francesco's first son. Francesco was delighted, doting on the child. Bianca's standing rose at once. Now she wasn't just a duke's mistress. She was the woman who can potentially become the mother of the next duke. People suddenly started to gather around her. Courtiers who had despised her and ignored her now swarmed to her side to curry favor. But the joy was not shared by all. Many feared Bianca now held too much power and that this Venetian interloper would bend Tuscany to her will. One man who took the matter particularly seriously was Francesco's younger brother, Ferdinando. He was a cardinal. From boyhood, he was known for his sharp mind. Francesco was not a fool either, but he was the bookish type, introverted and enjoying alchemy research over governing of Tuscany. Ferdinando was different. He was extroverted and good at building connections. Social, charming, he was the type who drew people in. Talented men gathered around him. He was generous too, and gave freely to the poor. The citizens of Florence loved him far more than they ever loved Francesco. He was also superb at business. Everything he touched made money, and mountains of it. So while Francesco was busy playing alchemy, Ferdinando built a fortune. But unfortunately for him, the primogenital succession being what it is, Francesco became Cosimo's heir to inherit the Grand Duchy of Tuscany. Ferdinando was sent to the church and became a cardinal. Rome saw him as the face of Tuscany, and he played the role well. He bought fine works of art and sent them back to Florence. He built himself a villa in Rome overlooking the city, the famous Villa Medici. It was a magnificent villa that raised the Medici prestige in Rome a notch or two. But even the smart and capable Ferdinando had troubles. And the trouble had a name: Bianca Capello, Francesco's mistress. Ferdinando loathed her. He would not even speak her name, but instead referred to her simply as the harlot. To his eyes, she was poison, out to swallow the Medici family whole. And the popular opinion of her in Florence was not much better. She was a married woman who flaunted herself at the duke's side and possibly gotten rid of her husband to stay there. Francesco showered her with jewels, palaces, luxuries, all paid for with taxes. The citizens grumbled. Bianca's rise fanned the flames of discontent. Worse still, if she ever replaced poor Giovanna as Grand Duchess, chaos could very well follow. The Holy Roman Empire, which is Giovanna's family, might have a fit. So Ferdinando made it his business to oppose Bianca. She, in turn, saw him as a thorn in her side, which, to be fair, he was. Francesco was delighted with Antonio's birth, but he still hadn't given up his hope for a legitimate heir from Giovanna and was visiting her to perform his duty. And very soon after, the Duchess Giovanna became pregnant again. Everyone waited with nervous anticipation. Will she produce an heir, or will it be another girl? And 9 months after Antonio's birth, in May 1577, Giovanna gave birth. And surprise, surprise, this time it was a boy, just because this family needs another drama. This was the long-awaited legitimate heir. He was named Filippo, in honor of his mother's cousin, Felipe II of Spain. With the births of the official and legitimate heir, the whole city rejoiced. Bells rang, wine flowed, the Florentines declared festivals. No one was happier than Ferdinando. But for Bianca, this was a disastrous development. Overnight, she went from a potential duchess back to nothing. And then, not long afterwards, Giovanna was pregnant again. That was even worse news. With just one son, and with 16th century childhood mortality rate being what it was, Bianca could have hoped that something might just happen to Filippo. But if another son arrived, Bianca would be finished. Her last hope gone. She fell into despair. Francesco was caught in the middle. Publicly, he beamed with joy. Privately, he tiptoed around Bianca, soothing her with promises, whispering that one day he would legitimize Antonio. A few months later, an unexpected disaster struck. As mentioned earlier, Giovanna was pregnant. She carried the child to full term, but then she suddenly had an accident and fell down the stairs and was badly hurt. Doctors rushed in and tried to deliver the child, but the fall had complicated things. The baby came out arm first. There was not much they could do in that situation with the medical technology of the time. Giovanna labored for hours. She was already badly wounded from the fall, and in the end, she could not survive the delivery. Nor did the child. Giovanna was gone. She was only 30. It was a tragedy, but the people were not satisfied. Was it simply a tragic accident? Why did she fall? Did anyone push her? Whispers were heard all over the city, and those whispers always had the same name, Bianca. No proof, of course, but that didn't matter. Everyone believed it was Bianca's doing. She did, after all, already gotten rid of her husband to continue her affair with the Duke, right? And Francesco the Duke? He went straight back to Bianca as if nothing had happened. Within weeks of Giovanna's tragic death, he married Bianca in secret. By the following year, they staged a splendid public wedding. Bianca had wanted the title of Grand Duchess so long, and now she finally got it. Her officially becoming the Duchess turned the backroom rumors into a full-blown conspiracy theory. People started to say openly that Bianca had killed Giovanna and stolen her place. The city's atmosphere turned sour, and people started to fear for the safety of little Filippo, the rightful heir Giovanna left behind. Now that Bianca was Grand Duchess, what chance did the little boy have? And this was when Ferdinando stepped in. He decided that as long as Filippo survives, the Medici family would not fall into Bianca's hand. So he took charge of taking care of the boy and guarding him. And Ferdinando poured his heart into protecting the child. But fate is cruel. At the age of 4, Filippo fell ill. His health broke down suddenly. Ferdinando prayed, but it was no use. The boy died. Many accused Bianca was more, but this time the truth was far simpler. The child had caught smallpox, a disease, not a dagger. But still, Ferdinando was shattered. He had lost his last hope against Bianca. And with Filippo gone, Bianca's son Antonio now stood as the heir. And with that, all power slipped into Bianca's hand. The city belonged to her. So the years passed. Bianca was now the Duchess and the mother of the heir of the Medici family. Cardinal Ferdinando could do nothing. He was deeply frustrated. But then one day, a man came to see him. He wanted to speak to Ferdinando about some urgent matter, alone. Curious, Ferdinando decided to hear him out. And what he heard nearly stopped his heart. Bianca, he was told, had never borne Francesco a child. Antonio was not Francesco's son. He was not Bianca's either. The story was that Bianca could not conceive, and she grew desperate. So desperate that she decided if she could not produce a son, she would procure one. She secretly gathered a few unfortunate women who had been abandoned while pregnant. There were always some such women in the city. She housed them in a secluded place and started to pretend to be pregnant. Among them, one gave birth to a baby boy. The moment the newborn's gender was confirmed, Bianca staged an elaborate performance. She pretended to go into labor, filled her birthing chamber with her own loyal attendants, and smuggled the infant inside. From that moment on, she passed him off as her own flesh and blood. Ferdinando questioned the witness sharply, but he could not find any obvious holes in his story, or maybe he didn't want to. The tale seemed to hold up. And for him, things finally seemed to make sense. Bianca had always been a slim woman, yet during her supposed pregnancy she grew enormous. But even after the birth, the pregnancy weight never came off. At the time, Ferdinando thought nothing of it. Many women gain weight after having children. But now, Ferdinando suspected that she had deliberately gorged herself, forcing her body to swell so she could look convincingly pregnant. And as Antonio grew up, people had often remarked, "The boy looks nothing like either of his parents." Unusual, but not impossible. Many children start to show more resemblance to their parents only as they reach adulthood, and many other children just never do. But what once seemed like a trivial detail now seemed a lot more significant to him. But there was one great problem. Too much time had already passed. The witnesses and evidence that could have proven this scheme had all but vanished. And in the age before the DNA testing, it was a perfect crime, almost. Ferdinando's search went nowhere. And there was another problem. His brother, the Grand Duke Francesco, was a spineless man, especially when it came to Bianca. The one man who could put things right never would. If Ferdinando told him of this story, the Duke would only run to Bianca and likely cut ties with him. So what to do? Surprisingly, at that point, Ferdinando seemed to have given up. One day, Ferdinando paid an official visit to his brother and Bianca. The court was stunned. Francesco, too, must have been surprised, and Bianca as well. What could he possibly want? Ferdinando entered, exchanging warm greetings, and after a few pleasantries, he revealed the true purpose of his visit. An apology. A formal, heartfelt apology. He confessed that he had behaved with arrogance, that he had spoken his sister-in-law with contempt and slander, and that these were grave and unforgivable faults unbecoming of a servant of God. He admitted that in doing so he had caused embarrassment to his brother the Grand Duke, and for that he begged for their forgiveness. From now on, he said, he would never repeat such mistakes. Instead, he would dedicate himself to supporting his brother and Bianca and work faithfully for the good of Tuscany. Francesco was relieved beyond measure. For Francesco, the feud between his wife and his brother was a huge burden, a problem that he just could not resolve. For Ferdinando to come to them asking to make up, it must have been hard for him. So Francesco embraced his brother and welcomed him back with open arms. Bianca was a little more cautious. Outwardly, she welcomed Ferdinando's change of heart, but inside she wondered. Why this sudden turnabout? What hidden motives does he have? I need to be more careful. From that day forward, Ferdinando became a frequent visitor, dropping by the ducal palace just to say hi, just to see his nephew, just to share in family dinner. He played the role of the affectionate younger brother, showering Bianca with gifts of apologies, flattering her, and doting on her son Antonio with toys and treats. Slowly, Bianca's suspicion began to soften. She grew accustomed to Ferdinando's presence, as did everyone else. Before long, it seemed entirely natural to see the cardinal in the palace. And then, the summer of 1589 arrived. The Grand Duke and his wife left Florence for their summer retreat, a villa in the countryside west of the city at Poggio a Caiano. This is the Villa Medici, a splendid residence built by none other than Lorenzo the Magnificent himself. The villa had long served as a ceremonial venue for hosting foreign dignitaries. Many great Medici weddings had taken place here. Cosimo I had celebrated his own marriage, and Francesco too had wed the emperor's daughter Giovanna here. Over time, the villa became the traditional summer residence of the ducal household. By this time, the capable Ferdinando had already been looking after Francesco and Bianca with all kind of work in the palace. So he naturally involved himself deeply in preparing their move to the villa as well. People whispered in amazement at this transformation. Some were disappointed. Even Ferdinando, once Bianca's fiercest critic, now bowing to her power. He's no different from the rest, they muttered. Just another man groveling for survival. Some mocked him openly. Yet, regardless of the scorn, Ferdinando spared no effort. He poured in his own money, his own people, ensuring his brother and sister-in-law would enjoy every comfort in their summer retreat. And then, as the summer was almost ending, an unthinkable thing happened. Both Francesco and Bianca fell ill at the very same time. The diagnosis? Malaria. Fevers raged, and the two were placed under strict isolation, attended by physicians. It was a dangerous disease, yes, but both were otherwise healthy, and at first the outlook seemed hopeful. Within days, they appeared to have turned a corner. Their appetites returned, they smiled, they ate well, and seemed to be on the road to recovery. But then, their conditions deteriorated sharply. Without warning, the fever worsened. They fell into a state of unbearable agony, crying out in pain for days. And at last, within mere hours of one another, both died. Francesco first, Bianca soon after. It was the 12th day since their illness had begun. The news stunned Tuscany. Word spread quickly, and high-ranking officials rushed to the villa. The crowds gathered, the palace buzzing with shock and disbelief. And yet, there was no chaos at all. Because the villa was already under perfect control, Ferdinando, the capable cardinal, was there, managing everything with calm precision. He busied himself with arranging the funeral. Francesco, of course, would be laid to rest with full honors, interred in the Medici family tomb at San Lorenzo. But Bianca? Ferdinando declared, quite firmly, that she would not share the family mausoleum. She lacked the rightful claim. Instead, she would be buried quietly in a small church nearby. Then he announced that a full autopsy would be carried out by physicians of his choosing, and that their findings would be made public. Every step was orchestrated smoothly, almost as if rehearsed, so much so that no one else, not even the highest officials of Florence, could interfere. Once the funeral was over, Tuscany belonged to Ferdinando. Officially, the 11-year-old Antonio should become the next Grand Duke of Tuscany. But from the very moment Francesco died, strange rumors began to circulate throughout Florence. Pamphlets appeared carrying explosive accusations. Antonio, Francesco's supposed heir, was not truly his child, nor was he Bianca's. The pamphlets laid everything bare, claiming that Bianca had concocted a conspiracy in order to become Grand Duchess. And the Tuscan assembly promptly stripped Antonio of his claim for succession and formally recognized Cardinal Ferdinando as the rightful heir. The whole process unfolded so smoothly, so seamlessly, that one could not help but suspect meticulous preparation behind the scenes. Officially, the cause of death was declared malaria. The papal court in Rome demanded a report, as was customary whenever a ruler of such high rank died. Ferdinando himself went to Rome and explained everything. His brother's health had been ruined by malaria, and his reckless eating habits hastened his demise. Bianca, he added, had been overcome by the shock of her husband's passing, and grief carried her swiftly to the grave. Rome was, of course, filled with Ferdinando's allies. The Curia accepted his explanation and allowed the matter to rest. But not everyone was convinced. Whispers grew. Was it truly malaria? Or had the Grand Duke and his wife been deliberately poisoned? And if so, who but Ferdinando could have done it? Suspicion pointed directly at him. People recalled how he had entered Villa Medici, bowing and smiling, only to emerge as the master of the house. He alone had controlled every detail in those critical days. He prevented any outside inquiry, silenced any chance of an independent investigation. Every announcement to the public had come from his lips alone. Even now, doubt lingers. Many believe Francesco and Bianca did not die of malaria at all. Accounts from the doctors who treated them still survive. They claimed that both were recovering when, after a meal, they suddenly complained of discomfort. Their symptoms worsened. Cold sweats, relentless thirst, cries for water, violent convulsions, uncontrollable vomiting, which happened to be signs of arsenic poisoning. If this is true, then the conclusion is chilling. The couple, already weakened by illness, had been given just enough poison to finish them off, which means Ferdinando's plan had been cold, meticulous, and hidden behind a mask of affection. All of those warm gestures of reconciliation to his brother and sister-in-law for years? Nothing but performance. He had played his part to perfection, and, when the moment came, slipped the poison. And what of the rumors that Antonio was not Francesco's son? Did Ferdinando really learn of this story from someone, or did he himself make up the story to displace Antonio? So Ferdinando's reign as the Grand Duke of Tuscany began, with a heavy cloud of suspicion. And what about Antonio? Ferdinando, as a gesture of magnanimity, gave a generous property to Antonio to keep him in friendly terms, and then persuaded him to join the clerical order of Knights of Malta, thereby cutting off any possibility that Antonio might have an heir that would later question the legitimacy of the Medici succession. And Antonio was not the only child of Francesco whose fate had been changed by Ferdinando. And we will see that story in our next video. So please like and subscribe to continue receiving more stories from history. And check out our playlist for stories from other countries and periods. It really helps a small channel like us.